With the second season of Demon Slayer concluding, I thought it would be a good idea to cover Tengen Uzui. First of all, I'd like to say that Tenzin is a massive Chad. He's flamboyant, incredibly entertaining to watch, 6'6", and absolutely yoked. He's by far my favorite character this season. When examining his body, what stands out a lot to me are his arms and shoulders. While that is technically the only part of his body that we can actually see, it's quite clear given the rest of his proportions that this part is definitely more developed than the rest of his body parts. His physique reminds me a lot of male gymnastics ring specialists. These guys have completely overpowering arms, specifically their biceps and forearms, and then they of course have gigantic shoulders. They also seem to have a relatively mediocre chest and not too much of a V-taper going on. This kind of makes sense, as Tengen would probably be doing a lot of gymnastics ring sort of movements, seeing as he was born a ninja. So this might actually be the kind of physique that you would expect to achieve if he did training like he most likely did. On a side note, I really like the gymnastics ring specialist physique, so I'm going to be having a lot of fun trying to recreate that today. Alright, so why do the gymnastics ring specialists have really big arms? There's a lot of theories for this. First of all, there's a lot of straight arm bicep strength that you need in order to hold yourself up in the planche and the Maltese and the iron cross. Especially the Maltese, I'd imagine. But the problem with just emulating these exercises is that you need to be a pretty advanced athlete to do all of this. To get into a position where your arms are being activated a lot, it requires a lot of balance, body control, flexibility, and mobility. Unless you can get yourself into these positions, you're not going to get that crazy intense bicep pump. Like, for example, a tucked planche will barely work on your arms, whereas a full Maltese will get your bicep under intense stress. If you just think about the leverages, right? There is exponentially more stress on your biceps the more you stretch out your arms and get into the position of a Maltese. Even if you do an assisted full Maltese, it works on your biceps a lot more than a tucked planche, for example, again, ever could. Your biceps are carrying much more of your weight proportionally, and they're much more stretched as well. What's also important is that they don't just do static moves either. A gymnast's routine works several ranges of motion. You see them go through all those circuits on the gymnastics rings routines. Like you see they go into a position for 2 seconds and then they move on to another. This is why I think, for example, calisthenics athletes don't have overpowering arms when gymnasts do. Calisthenics is more focused on static skill acquisition, whereas gymnastics is focused, like they work more through emotion. At least when it comes to the more advanced skills, like I mentioned, planche, Maltese, and iron cross. Much more likely to incorporate those movements with another type of motion. Another important thing to notice is their hand placement. Oftentimes their hands are more supinated, whereas calisthenics athletes have their hands in a more neutral position. This puts exponentially more stress on your biceps. Just look at a parallel Maltese or straddle planche when compared to a rings Maltese or straddle planche. You can see the biceps are much more flexed than the latter. Gymnasts also work on more advanced movements more often, like I was talking about with the tucked planche. They don't really do tucked planches at all, really. They don't do easier variations of an exercise. They just do the hard variation of the exercise with more support. Like, for example, they're not going to really do tucked planche, but they're just going to be doing straddle planche with like someone helping to support their hips up. Now, obviously you can get some big arms with calisthenics, but that simply doesn't compare to what you see in gymnastics. And what's also important to note is, the straight arm strength. I don't think there's another sport or another discipline that incorporates straight arm strength. Certainly not to the degree that gymnasts do. That, along with the stabilization, I'm sure that plays a major role. I'm not saying these are the only reasons, but these are just the reasons that I noticed that are most likely contributing to their massive bicep size. And that's because of the way they train them. I think they train them in a very special and a very good way. But again, it's very hard for people to actually train them like this because most people can't actually get into those positions. Regardless, I will try and dumb it down and simplify it to as easy of a way that you can incorporate their techniques and get similar gains to, approximately similar gains to what they see in this video. One more thing to note actually, since I know some people are going to say this, there are some confounding variables. Like gymnasts are usually shorter. The average height for a gymnast is like 5'3" or something. Also, not every gymnast is super jacked. Like you could look at some gymnast medal holders who don't have like crazy large biceps. They're still like relatively huge, but they're not like crazy big. The one guy everyone mentions when they talk about like huge gymnastics athletes, gymnastics ring specialists, is Arthur Zanetti, I believe. He's kind of an anomaly even within the people I looked up. But still, it is consistent that their arms and shoulders are relatively bigger than all their other body parts, and are still clearly bigger proportionally to all the other body parts. Still bigger than, for example, calisthenics athletes. And again, just to remind you, I think this is because of the fact that they use a lot of supinated motions with the rings, so their arms are in like a bicep curling sort of like tilted outwards sort of motion, and they work through a range of movement. The rings are also unstable, making them have to work on their stabilizing muscles more, and all that other good stuff. Alright, so let's get back to Tengen. If I hadn't made it clear by now, we're going to be working our biceps and our shoulders a lot in this workout. First up here, we have archer dips. This will work, of course, your chest and your shoulders, but it'll also work your straight arm strength as you have to like pull yourself up with the opposite arm. If you get good enough at this, this probably also transfers into the iron cross. And yeah, honestly, it's just a great exercise to build muscle. Next is chin-ups, pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to be, pulling yourself up. It's going to work on your biceps quite a bit. If you can, do muscle-ups, but it's pretty cold outside. I didn't want to try and do that today. The footage you're seeing of me doing it right now is just old footage. You should probably also do skin the cat. It'll work on your shoulder mobility in general, and it probably gives your biceps a really good stretch. By the way, this isn't in order. I'm just giving you guys exercises that you can do. I'm not saying you should warm up with archer dips or anything like that. Anyways, after that, you can get into some chest flies. This will help work on your Maltese, of course, and it also just helps give your biceps and your chest a really good pump. If you want an extra stretch, you can also tilt your arms outward in a supinated position. This is probably more applicable, to be honest, and it will especially work on your biceps. The next exercise here is pretty simple and pretty self-explanatory. It's just ring bicep curls. I'd imagine this has some carryover into like pullovers, which is a common gymnastics move, and it also just obviously works on your biceps as directly as you can work them. You could probably also do this with one arm, although I didn't actually demonstrate it. The next thing here we have are planche leans. Make sure you supinate your arms as much as you can, and try and pulse yourself up and down. I tried doing it a little bit, and you guys can see me fall over. But yeah, that'll get you some dynamic bicep action in there. Of course, your shoulders are going to burn up as well. And yeah, I'm not the best at demonstrating this. I still have to work on my planche a lot myself. So I hope you get the idea. And the last thing here we have are rear delt flies. And this is just the back part, the rear part of the shoulder. This is the part of the shoulder that people just kind of neglect. And I think it's important that you are able to work on that muscle group. It's important for a very complete shoulder. And yeah, those are the exercises that I can think of that you could potentially do that will work you in a similar manner that gymnastics athletes do it. Make sure you guys get a lot of volume in, because gymnastics, those athletes, they work out for like 4 hours a day or something like that. Of course, I'm not saying that you guys have to do the same thing, but all I'm saying is that they get a lot of reps in. So I think, focusing a lot on volume is probably a very good idea. So yeah, there's all the exercises. There's the sort of functional, for lack of a better word, gymnastics ring sort of routine that is inspired by Tengen and his physique, because I found him a very cool character in general, but I found his physique to be very striking. And yeah, hopefully you guys have been enjoying Demon Slayer. I've been enjoying it personally. The last episode should actually come out today. I mean, I'm recording this at like 2 a.m. on Sunday, February 13th. It's supposed to come out today. So yeah, that'll be it for me. That'll be it for Apolly Athletics. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you all next time. Alright, peace.